Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back, everybody.
So, guys, we've been trying to give you a mix of things to cover in this weird, crazy, chaotic end of an age that we find ourselves taking part in.
You know, and we find it very important to help people pick apart these times because it's so confusing. There's so much information to filter through. Where do you start? You're starting to embark on a spiritual journey, yet you have all this 3D stuff being thrown in your face. How do you split it apart? How do you prioritize? What's really, really important? What do you really need to know? We try to bring that to you.
And we understand that so many people want to know just what's going on in the world right now and not necessarily want to get the behind the scenes look at things as to why. And, we understand that this is nothing new, even though this might seem new to all of us. As far as the level of chaos upon the world. I mean, if you are somebody that's been on this planet for, 40, 50 years, maybe 60, maybe 70, maybe 80 years, you've never seen anything like this, quite like this. The level of chaos and confusion as everything just seems to be unraveling right before our eyes.
It is, things are being frayed. There's so many illusions. It's like so much smoke and mirrors. What do you really believe? And I tell you, they do a good job with smoke and mirrors. But when you are able to connect with your higher self, go within and find that authentic you, that gets rid of all the smoke and mirrors.
Yes, absolutely. So we've always tried to give the news of what's happening in the world with a spiritual perspective and then put up videos that are delving deep into the spiritual side of things as well as deep into the history and deep into the manipulation as well. And truly, I was not going to originally go this route. Originally, when I made Evolutionary Energy Arts, it was just basically to be a tool for those people that I was leaving behind, so to speak, in one part of the country, as I had been doing a lot of energy work. I had been teaching Qigong. I had been teaching Reiki, various forms of working with the life force and meditation and things like that in person. And so when I was going to hit the road and start to get my butt in gear and move, this was a way that they could stay in touch with me, so to speak. So the very first videos we ever put up were always about energy, consciousness, and the like. And it wasn't truly until I was contacted by that group that starts with an I and ends with an I that all of a sudden they unintentionally, I guess, lit a fire in me to expose everything and to show just how everything is really a manipulation. So while they were seeking to control, it ended up doing the opposite, and it ended up sending this channel and the subsequent channels off on this tangent of exposing really everything that has been, revisionist history when you get down to it. And you see this quote, "History is written by the victors," attributed to Winston Churchill. I'm sure many of you have heard of this before, and there are a lot of other little twists on this. We see Napoleon had said this earlier. History is written by the winners, over 100 years earlier. Again, when we think of these people, what do we think? Winston Churchill. Well, the world at war, right? Napoleon. Well, the French had the revolution. They got rid of the kings and the queens, and they ended up with a dictator. And this is what happens so often. And Napoleon, started his conquests. And, he had some tough times and he had some victories as well. And here is this saying, history. We could break it down into his, or we could change his to hers or theirs, story. because it is a story, and it is told from the perspective of those that are currently in charge.
Yes, and I just want to talk for a moment about how I felt the first time I heard this. I went to a weekly women's group at church, and someone had said that, history is written by the victors. And I took that information as, oh, so the good guys won. They wrote the information, and that's who we're following. Yes, okay, got it. But no. The other ones that we're going to be speaking of, they're the ones who have written history for us to follow and us to abide by and us to adhere to and control our minds, hearts, and souls, not because they're the good guys, but because they are the controllers.
And again, all these people that we see, we have to recognize. If you grew up in the UK, and I didn't grow up in the UK, I'm just assuming, and yes, we can make asses out of you and me when we assume, that the history that you're taught about Winston Churchill is going to basically be positive. He helped us overcome the Nazis. Yeah, that's what we'll be told. And again, of course, it's going to look a little different from each country that you're in. The history of which Winston Churchill might not be exactly the same being brought up in, say, Poland or Germany or Italy. And it's the same thing also when we look at Napoleon. I'm sure it's different from each perspective. But these guys are still puppets. This is the part that we want to get across. Sure, they do have egos. They love to be in the limelight. And they want their names stamped in history in the light of being someone of significance, of power, of altering this history. Even if this history is truly nothing but a script being manipulated from higher perspectives.
Indeed. These are people who want their names written down in the books. They want their pictures out so bad that they will do and say whatever it takes to get that information out there for themselves. Because for them, the ends justify the means. They just want their name out there. They want their ego fed. That's the most important thing to them. And that's what they go by.
So if history is written by the victorious, then what if the victors lied? That's just an obvious way to look at it. What if they lied the whole time? Now, here we're brought up thinking very, very simply. Think about how simple the logic is to think that, well, here I am in this country. We won. We're the good guys. Nobody ever, very few, probably think logically past that and think, well, what about the people's perspective in the other countries, whatever country that is? If you want to go back to, France and Napoleon going into Russia and having his Waterloo, what you might get from a Russian perspective as opposed to a French perspective could be very different. And then again, take in the social and economic positions of the people. Again, it could be very, very different. How many times? I mean, think about that. I'm remembering a little kid. We all go into school. We basically sit down. Okay, teacher's in. Now we all stand up, and now we all say our Pledge of Allegiance. And we're brought up thinking, I'm a patriot. Yay! And without questioning things. Well, how did we get here? And here we hear, of course, from our side of things in the United States or in the UK, the dark evil of the Nazis, etc., or the Russian, the communist menace. There's always some big bad enemy out there that's threatening to gobble us up. Always out there threatening to gobble us up. And we never even think, well, how about our leaders that are telling us all these things? Do they have a vested interest in keeping us thinking along a certain line of thought?
There's some people who have control issues. And their job, they need to control. They have to control because things need to go their way. Because if they don't go their way, they're not going to get what they want. They're not going to get what they need. Their system cannot be fed. So they really are not above telling very, very small children, if you don't believe this story, then you're going to burn in hell forever. These are the kind of beings that are actually writing this story when all along I thought everything was true and good and nice, and we were the good ones. And of course the good ones wrote this. It never dawned on me that what if the victors are lying to keep control, until I got deeper into the system and things in my life were happening I couldn't make any sense of, until I turned that lens and I could see the truth a little bit more for myself. Well, what if these beings are really controlling, and what if they do want to control the way we heal or we don't heal so that they can keep the money flow in their pockets? It was probably the medical system was the first thing that really opened my eyes, because I had done everything that the doctors said, everything. And then I was just getting sicker. And not only was I getting sicker, one of my very dear friends, she passed away, and we were doing everything that they said. And everyone that I was looking at, they were going to doctors, they were getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So I had to change my perspective. And once I did that, everything started to fall into place. And because of my experience, I want to share, because I don't want other people to go through what I went through. If I could save one person, then this is worth it. And this is not a popular topic to talk about. Most people don't believe it. They don't want to hear it. But you know what? Lives can be saved if we just say, hey, change your perspective. Take things into your own hands and study for yourself. Learn for yourself. Stop being spoon-fed, because that's what they do. They say, here, they'll read some quotes out of the Bible that might sound very, very good, but then we believe the entire Bible when it was put together to just simply control us. No, they're not above that.
And it's not there, not just there, it's everywhere. This is everything that we are subject to, because as George Orwell says, he who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. That's a loop that they got you coming, they got you going. So we're brought up thinking certain things. We're brought up being educated. Most people go through the public education system, which really is a public programming system. It's programming you. It's programming you, and we could use certain words, to be the perfect little consumer, to be the perfect little debt slave, to go out there. Well, you know what the American dream is, don't you? You own your own home, you have 2 cars, you're successful, you have all this stuff. Basically you become a debt slave. It's just somebody that spends their entire existence never, basically lighting the creative fires within, never getting to what we would call in the East, in the Sanatana Dharma, self-realize, which means never really getting to know yourself. No, you're basically hammered into either being a round or square peg. And you're stuck in a hole. This is the way it goes. It's not about discovering, who am I? Why do I love this? And why do I dislike that instinctively? Where does it come from? Where do my likes and dislikes come from? Where, do these thoughts, these feelings I have about certain subjects or certain places or certain people even come from? We never even really take the time to go within and discover who we are. Most people don't even do that, and society's not made to let you do that.
Right, that's what I wanted to say. So many people don't even have the time to even fathom or think about who they are, because we're really spinning our tires to get into debt, to, keep food on the table, just to keep the basics. We're going and going and going and going. When does that leave us time to go within if we only have 8 hours to shower and prepare for the next day and have all the kids fed and the house cleaned and the pets taken care of, and then we have to go back to work? Sorry, this is very deliberate. This system is set up so that we cannot go within and find out what we're made of and who we are. But if Mike and I can talk to you guys about it and tell you how we did it, then maybe you will and you can go out on your own path and start to discover who you are.
And I remember as a kid growing up that I instinctively liked who I was until I lost myself in high school and early adulthood. And then I didn't regain myself until I achieved the one physical goal I wanted, which was to buy a house for myself, because as a kid, we lived paycheck to paycheck. My parents never owned anything. They had only one car that they would share, and we always rented. And we had to move multiple times because of things that happened with the landlord. One time the landlord never paid his mortgage, and we had to move because he was, having his house foreclosed on. So, and we had really enjoyed that house and liked that house. It was actually my favorite house that we were in, and I had moved all the time. And maybe that's a little bit of my gypsy blood too, because as a kid we were always moving whenever there was an issue with a landlord. So the only goal I had was I want to be able to control my own destiny. I don't want to not have to move if I don't want to move. So, I had one goal, and that was to buy a house. And I bought a house at like 22, which was something that my parents hadn't accomplished, in their lives. And then I felt very empty. There was something missing. It was totally the opposite. I thought, wow, okay, now I'm going to be happy. No, now I was miserable. Why am I miserable? Here I am, married, house, kids. Well, for one, the realization was I couldn't stand what I was doing, but I just did it because everybody else did it, and it paid the bills. This is the society that we're in. I was not living what my higher self had decided to do in this life. I wasn't following it. I got wrapped up in the system. I got caught in Satan, the adversary's, lair, and dragged into what everybody else gets trapped into. Credit card debt, mortgage, car payments, all these things. And it's not that we don't have a mortgage now, albeit it's actually much less than the one I had first 30-something years ago. Still, this system entraps souls. It keeps us from understanding who we are, why we're here in the first place. And it gives us this illusion of solidity of what the past was, of what the present is, and what the future is going to be. Well, it's all basically determined before for you, and they want to control the narrative. So history is written by the victors. The truth is written by the fearless. You have to be fearless to tell the truth. And so, like when we talk on EEARTS, EEARTS was built up with people that are mostly, no offense, but more open-minded people that have been through a lot of very similar experiences to Cindy and myself. Evolutionary was brought about really originally covering the earth changes, things like that, and the hidden mysteries. But, here you find people that come more in just for what's happening in the news, et cetera, et cetera. And if you, rankle them with a paradigm, like recognizing that Yahweh is revisionist history, it clearly is. Ask Bible scholars about it, deep Bible scholars. The Bible itself has so much revision to it. And again, it's just a collection of writings that were put together and unified much after their time period. And in fact, it's again something that is just right out there. We could see all the edits, and yet you'll have people that believe it's totally the absolute word of God, but they're absolutely wrong. It's not. And you could just look at it and see that it's not. No, it's a control tool that's been used. There are some things in there that we could get value from, but again, if it is the number one most published book of all time, and it's not even close really, then obviously if the world is ruled by the adversary, then it's obviously a major tool of the adversary. But this is where people will pick and choose their battles, and there's certain programming that they can't get over, or it just shakes their whole perspective to where they have to actually rethink their entire lives. And that's terrifying for people. And it's understandable that it is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Because the controllers know and understand that our belief systems are key to keep us doing what they need us to do. So when someone's belief system is, is looked at and, put up to the test, people can be they can really lash out, but they lash out of fear. But that's what I noticed is like this certain belief system, if you put it into question in any way, shape, or form, people lash out like you can feel the hatred and the energy. And it's like, if this is so loving and kind and free and moral, why are people lashing out in hatred? And that can actually be dangerous. So when we look at things, and if there's those threats inside of us, when our belief system is looked at in a different way, maybe we should take a look at that and see where that comes from inside of us.
It's all about perspective. 1492, the year the Native Americans discovered Columbus lost at sea, right? I mean, it's all about perspective. Or we could say 1492, the day, that began the infamy of the genocide of the indigenous people in the Americas that led to the death of 65 to 100 million people. Yet it's celebrated as the day Columbus discovered America for the Europeans. And that's what you're saying is for the Europeans, albeit Europeans were here before that too. I mean, the Vikings were here. There's evidence that Vikings were made it all the way to South America. And then again, we could look to Atlantis and the Atlantean civilization, which is based on fact and based on reality. Of course, it's whitewashed, and it's got to be kept a secret because they can't have us knowing exactly what our true history is and how many times they've distorted things. So still, you have so many, and I would say the majority of the Republican Party, people that are elected in the Republican Party, are pro-Columbus Day. So this is where, again, if you're just going to think the left is the bad guys and the right is the good guys, you're in their paradigm. They still got you. You haven't escaped anything yet. You got to recognize that the left-right paradigm itself, it's not really about pushing certain ideas. It's not really about right and wrong. It's about keeping us fighting. It's about keeping us divided. As long as we keep fighting each other, they rule the roost, and they control everything from above. And this is exactly what's been going on forever. So again, it's about perspective. You could look at this as a horrible year because it did begin a genocide that was worse than what we saw happen in Nazi Germany. Actually, more people. And speaking of Nazi Germany, we could just listen to what their leadership said. And Hermann Goering, when he was on trial in Nuremberg, and he was sentenced to hang to death, and then they say that he killed himself, took cyanide. Why, of course the people don't want war. Why would some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war where the best he could get out of it is to come back to the farm in one piece? Naturally, the common people don't want war, neither in Russia, nor in England, nor in America, nor for that matter in Germany. So we could change that to today to Ukraine and Russia, UK, America, Germany. Again, it applies at any time. So that is understood. But after all, it's the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it's a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to do the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same way in any other country. And this was at the Nuremberg trials in 1946. And there you go. Finally, somebody says some truth. Yeah. So when, you have 46 or 45 or anybody that's in politics and they're automatically talking about being a patriot, what they're really saying is you're a fool. And we could count on stoking your ego to the point where you will do things that you wouldn't normally do.
Oh, and that does hurt. That does hurt. That's very painful to think that way. But they are using people exactly like that. And they have no problems doing it. That's the thing. They're using people's not understanding the system, and they're using the human nature to want to do good and want to help other people. And they're twisting it. And they're twisting it in such a painful, horrible way. But you know what? It gets them control. So they're going to continue to do it. And they're not going to let up. Because if they let up, well, people might start finding out who they are and go in a different direction. And they need people to think, like Mike said, to the left, to the right. Oh, let's throw in something in the middle just in case they actually don't like that. But let's at least make sure they take one of these pieces of pie. You have to have one of these pieces of pies. There is no other alternative. And really, when you sit and look at that, well, what do you do? What do you do? And it just keeps circling back, you guys. You go within and you find your very own path. And then ultimately, when you start to grow that energy inside of you, other people are going to join you. We don't have to choose what they set out before us. We can make different. We are really, really powerful co-creating beings who have had their power just taken away from us because we didn't know any better. And that's not fair.
Yeah, and that's, that might be a very, very harsh statement, for some to process because, we're brought up thinking and we're taught, hey, it's a blessing that you live here. You got to be grateful that you're here. There's food on your plate. There's not on children in Africa. I mean, how many of us had that said to us by our parents? And it was true for the most part, and it still is true. And then we have to say why in this day and age. Are they basically paying farmers not to farm when there are people starving, not just in Africa, but all over and more in your own backyard now? It's again because, they can't have profits get so low that they are in danger of losing their high positions. They're more about looking at their bank accounts and making sure that it's ever growing, that their power and influence is ever growing. And they really don't care about any of the common people. They never have. This is the bottom line. They use the common people against each other. And that's what we have going on right now. There's a situation in Haiti right now. And the headlines was saying, who's going to go in there and restore order? Will it be the U.S.? Will it be the U.K.? Hey, well, maybe Canada, because if not, it's going to end up being Russia or China or somebody else going in. And again, it's not about restoring order. It's about the fact that the people are tired of things that are going on. Society is breaking down. They can't have it break down any farther so that there could ever be any sort of real freedom coming. No, they got to make sure it stays under one of the control grids. Because again, everything you see going on right now is all about control. It's always all about control. Many people probably realize, that again, every country on the planet is really controlled by the banking industry. And, it's really the bankers that hold the power. We had a Rothschild say that straight out, that they don't care what the puppet is on the throne or in the White House or in the Kremlin. It's really about controlling through the monetary system. And then we hear about the great reset. Yeah, everything is so telegraphed. Everything is all out there for us. If we just shed the blinders from our eyes, whatever that blinder is, It'll be different for different people. It might be, patriotism for your country or even your particular area in your country. Because I've lived in so many different areas that I found people that were rabid about their particular area in the country being the best, the absolute best. And it's great to appreciate your area, your people that you're around, the vibrations, the frequency, the nature, the way of life. That's all fine. But do we have to elevate it over anybody else's, even when we've never experienced somebody else's life? How do we know it is better? Why are we assuming? There it goes into that thing again. This is all human ego. People don't want to be faced with this. It's all ego. We're controlled through our ego. We're controlled through the system. Where are you going to find clarity of mind here? Where? This is what they want for everybody. They want to herd everybody into the mega cities where, there's towers everywhere. There's energy everywhere. There's so many cell phones pinging constantly. There's, chaos and noise. And you're just, struggling to pay the mortgage, to pay the rent, to pay your food, to pay your energy bills. Why do you think all that's going up? It's going up because they can't have you waking up. They want you to be totally focused on their system. If you're focused on their system, you're in their system. So history is written by the victors, the strongest, the most determined. Truth is found most often in silence, in the quiet places. And yes, so you're not going to find truth here. There's no truth to be found here. If you could find truth here, then you are truly somebody like the next Buddha, the next Christ, the next whatever you want to say. Because, it's too chaotic, it's too crazy, and you're in the system head to toe, bathed in so many energies that's almost impossible to even know, who am I? That most basic question, who am I? When we get out and we get away, think about why vacations feel so good when you unplug and you don't check your emails at work. You don't check your phone messages. All of a sudden you could breathe and you start to recognize maybe your body. Maybe you don't even notice your body except for when it complains to you, because you're just so caught up in all the day-to-day buzz that keeps you from realizing who you are. You need to unplug. We need to unplug. This society is the antithesis. It's the exact opposite of the way things were originally planned to be. You need to get out and just be in nature. Just be out there with everything that is natural. And take quiet time as much as possible. Go within. Your answers don't lie without. We could constantly memorize different things. We can memorize every theological treatise ever written, and we'll still have no answers. The only real answers come from within.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They do, and going out to nature is such a good way to find balance and find that inner peace. If you're in a situation where you are in a crowded place or you're just in chaos, finding some peace and quiet in nature really is the key to finding direction. Like, which way do I go? What do I need to do? What do I prioritize? All of those questions can only be answered by you, by connecting to your higher self. And understandably, when Mike was going through those pictures, it was hard for me to even look at them because I can feel all that busyness, dizziness, all of that energy going to and from. How are you going to be able to prioritize or even start when you're in a space like that? But so many people are. And just to get out, just for a little while, maybe it's only just one night, 24 hours out of that. And at least start the process of asking yourself, am I in alignment? Am I in the best place for what I am here to do in this lifetime? And asking yourself those hard questions like, what are my priorities? You can do that out in nature where it's quiet, and settling those waves and making them still so you can see deep into the soul to see what the soul needs and wants. We gotta still the waves. We gotta still the chaos in our mind and in our world. And really, once you get started, you just gotta start. Give yourself 5 minutes to even sit down and be in a quiet spot. Just 5 minutes. Set your timer so you don't get overwhelmed. Start with 60 seconds. Allow the energies to calm around you, and then take a look and see how things are going around you, because they will be getting better. It makes you more congruent with your surroundings. But most importantly, it helps you understand who you are and what you're made of and what you're here to do.
Absolutely. And again, it is important to prepare for everything, obviously. And that includes, and each person's going to prioritize things to their own degree, but it definitely includes the spiritual side of things. And for Cindy and I, that's really number one, even more than covering the physical basics, because ultimately we don't really look at things like trying to survive to 100, trying to survive to any particular age, and hanging on to this vehicle, at all costs. No. It's just a vehicle. And so we know we go on. We've experienced these out-of-body periods in time on a regular basis. We could sense the other layers to our energy body, and we've had interaction with so many beings, and we do every single day, of a non-physical variety. Their frequency is not the exact same as a 3D object, but the reality is just the same. And so we know, it's not like a conjecture. It's not like we theorize. No, we know. So thus, when you know, there's no fear, because you know. And, when my mom passed on, before she passed on, when she was leaving her body and going through that transition, because there's stages to this, typically, unless it's traumatic or sudden, I felt her. We were meditating. Cindy and I were doing Qigong, and I was standing there embracing the tree position, drawing in the life force into the body. And I felt a tug on my beard, and I knew it was my mom, and I knew my mom was close to passing over, and she passed over, within 24 hours. And, it was because she hated me having a beard. And of course, that's what she's going to do. She's going to tweak my beard. Either that or give me a little punch in the ribs in a joking manner. That was just her way about things. And she was a dear and a sweetheart and adorable. And, seriously, she was just adorable, cute. I totally loved her. She was a fabulous, fabulous mother, and still is. She's just on the other side now. And the same thing with my father, though my father is much, much more than I ever realized, because, he was a product of the conditioning that people that do have abilities and such go through. So he kept quiet on purpose, and he was doing that to shield us and to keep us safe. But again, that's a different story. The whole point is that, I wouldn't have discovered these things without, many, many thousands of hours of meditation. And I wouldn't be able to do that without, getting out of the system. And, I'm not telling you got to get out of it. You got to make your own choice. It just depends on what you prioritize. If we prioritize things, then we're going to be slaves to those things. It's so basic. And yeah, there are some great little biblical quotes that are very, very true. Again, you can't serve, God, i.e. source, the higher self, that which is eternal and lies within each of us, and serve the system. And this system is totally an adversarial system. It's all about hijacking you. It's all about hijacking what you wanted to do when you came into this body, what you really wanted to learn, what you wanted to grow from. And it's all about getting you to fit into one of their little patterns. Again, they give us the options, just like that great salesman. Well, I have A, B, or C. No, I like A, but I think you might like B better. Oh, you ma'am, you seem to be liking number C. Which one's it going to be, A, B, or C? Instead of none of the above, not even this place. I'm going elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Right. Discovering what are the other options, what are the other things that I can do. And many people are so immersed into the system that they don't even think or fathom that there might be something else that they can do. And, look at the word they when we talk about the controllers. Who are they? These nameless, faceless beings that definitely stay out of the light. They stay way far back, and they use like a puppet control system. Bloodlines are so important because bloodlines can be overridden. Bloodlines can be tapped into. Bloodlines can be taken over. That's why the bloodlines, when we talk about the royalty, those bloodlines are there for a very good reason.
They certainly are. And again, your piece might be different than my piece, might be different than Cindy's, than your spouse's, your daughter, your mother. I just wish you all could experience your piece. And for me, it's been a wonderful experience. And I did leave everything I had worked, 42 years to achieve. I left it all. I had pretty much the typical American thing going, and left in a broken down little car that died 6 months later, and gave everything to my spouse for $1, because that's the best legal way to do it, because I knew I wasn't being true to myself and I wasn't living my purpose. And I was going to just jump out of that airplane and just, know that the chute was going to open when I popped the chute and popped the cord. And it did. And, again, my goals aren't the same as when I was younger. And again, we don't have the goals of being millionaires or anything like that. No, I mean, when we wake up every single day, it's about how can we best do our purpose. What is our purpose? Our purpose is to change the system, and also to teach others how they can change their lives in a positive direction and wake others up to this system. So, we would both be very, very happy living off grid in a tiny little cabin on some acreage. We don't even have to own the acreage, just basically be at peace where we can do, the things we love to do, which is, again, the mantras, the meditation, the yoga, the Qigong, the hiking, the playing with the dogs, the being out in nature, the watching the animals, watching the birds, and also maybe playing a little guitar. That's really it. No grandiose designs, just being ourselves and cultivating the spirit, cultivating the soul. So for you, maybe it looks more like this. It might look like that. It might look like this. Every one of us is unique. Whatever your heart's desire should be, you should be able to go for it. And again, can we enjoy it without owning it? Oh, I don't think the leadership of this world can.
That's right. They're geared that way. They're stuck that way. And you and I came here for an experience. So it's time we figure out, well, what is that experience going to be, and then live it.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. We would encourage probably people to use Ko-Fi more, just simply because yesterday we had an episode where our Patreon disappeared for a while. And so there was about a 2-hour period when the Patreon was saying we have 0 Patreons, and we couldn't log into it or anything. And the same thing happened with Bitchute too. We couldn't get up on Bitchute. It was like there was no account. So again, it was the controllers just basically threatening us. And we're okay because, again, I made the decision many years ago, if I was to become homeless in a certain part, as long as it's living my life my way to the fullest and doing our mission, that's perfectly fine. So, we will never be bought or paid for.
No, never.
God bless and namaste.
Namaste.